Hello out there in theater-loving land. I'm Peter Marks, and this is another edition of Marks and Vincentelli. And, where is Elizabeth? Elizabeth, hello? Sorry. Elizabeth is, quote, on assignment, as they say. So I'm flying solo today, and that's okay, because the talk today is something I've been wanting to address, and I'll fill in Elizabeth about it later on. My guest is one of Broadway's most energetic and thoughtful producers. That's right, a real-life producer on our podcast. And his name is Tom Kirdahy, who currently shepherds one of the biggest new hits on Broadway, Just in Time with Jonathan Groff, who was a recent guest on our show. He's also one of the producers of the new big screen version of Kiss of the Spider-Woman, the musical, starring Jennifer Lopez, and whose book was written by Tom's late husband, the playwright Terrence McNally. The screenplay is by Bill Condon, based on Terrence's script. That he is a lover and producer of musicals makes him a perfect subject for this discussion. His credits also include producing Hadestown and the revival of Gypsy with Audra McDonald. And he's also involved with Lincoln Center Theater's current revival of Ragtime, whose book was also written by Terrence. Because what we're talking about today is Tom's career and this question of how much trouble the Broadway musical is in. A recent article in the New York Times by theater reporter Michael Paulson held essentially that costs are out of control, and it's nearly impossible for a musical to turn a profit these days. Since the pandemic, Paulson notes, only 3 musicals have made their money back. We'll be diving into that and other questions with Tom. So let's get right to it. Welcome, Tom. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Good morning, Peter.
We're going to talk about a number of your projects and certainly about the movie that's being released this month of Kiss of the Spider-Woman, which I know for you is a labor of love, among other things.
Yes.
But let me start with a finish this sentence question for you, because most of your work is on Broadway. And I want to hear what you have to say about this. Like we have a State of the Union address every year, and it starts with the words, the State of the Union. And I'm going to say to you, Tom Kirdahy, the state of the Broadway musical is
alive and well and evolving.
So, yeah, I think that's a good, fair statement. And as a upstanding member of the Broadway community, I didn't expect you to come out with anything less than something hopeful and positive. But stepping back for a minute, Tom, give us a little sense, or give the audience, we so rarely get to talk to producers in podcasts or in journalism. I talk to producers a lot, but the audience may not. Tell us a little how you got into this work, how you became one of the most prominent producers on Broadway.
Well, I've had a career in 2 acts, as you may know. I was a social justice lawyer. I worked providing free legal services to low-income people living with HIV and AIDS for almost 20 years. But I had studied dramatic literature and politics as an undergraduate. Went to law school at NYU from 85 to 88. Thought I would either be a gay rights lawyer or an entertainment lawyer, specifically in theater. Theater has always been my passion. When I graduated law school, it was really the height of the AIDS crisis. I was a healthy young gay man, and I realized my community was being decimated, so I threw myself into the work. And I wound up providing free legal services to people with HIV and AIDS. I thought it would be 2 years. I got a grant to do the work. And as pandemics happen, they tend to last longer than we as a society anticipate. And I wound up doing it for almost 20 years. During that time, I became the head of an LGBTQ group out on the east end of Long Island, where I was doing an HIV project. I found out that Terrence McNally and Edward Albee were 2 of the founders of this organization called the East End Gay Organization. And because I loved theater so much, I thought, let's do a panel conversation about theater. I had lived in the city for most of my adult life. I'd moved out to do this HIV project, and I wanted to fill my time, and queer rights and theater makers were always the things that I cared most about. And Terrence and Edward and Lanford Wilson all said that they would be on this panel. And I met Terrence in the green room of Guildhall in East Hampton, and something chemical happened very quickly. He always claimed it was love at first sight. I didn't feel that, but we quickly became a couple. And I was very committed to my career over the course of the next few years. As we began to live together, I took an interest in what he was doing and all of his friends were doing. And at some point in time, I said to some producers I met, I would love to be able to sit in the room. I'll bring you coffee. I'll lick stamps. I'll read contracts. I am an attorney. I'll read contracts. I'll do whatever you want if you just let me sit in the back of the room. And a few of them, Manny Eisenberg, Liz McCann, Susie Dietz, all were really kind to me. And over time, I just fell in love with it, realized I wanted to raise the curtain on the second act of my career. And I seem to have an aptitude for it. I certainly have a passion for it. And that kind of brings us to today. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The passion part really is essential. I mean, you really can't do this without absolutely loving it. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about was some of your passion projects or the projects you pick. I sat across from you at one preview of Just in Time, which I've told the audience that you are the producer of. And Jonathan Groff, who plays Bobby Darin in the piece, comes into the audience, and he came up to you and he serenaded you at one point. And I saw you beaming. There was like an exhilaration in your eyes. You were blissful in that moment. And I thought, this is what a producer lives for, to be in a full packed house at Circle in the Square, watching the work in its fullness and its joy. And the star knows you and feels this love for you in that moment. It's just, that seems like the fulfillment to me, of what the emotional side of being a producer entails.
It's as good as it gets. When Jonathan Groff is serenading you in front of a sold out house. Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. And you love the art and you feel the sense of engagement that the audience has. I mean, the audience goes insane. It's from our first performance, it's been a huge hit. But yes, to see an artist of Jonathan's caliber, really at the top of his game, and to know that we worked, I think, for 7 years to realize this dream, it is what we live for. It's like pushing a boulder up a mountain. It is so hard, and the odds are so remote that it's going to work. And I joked when I really switched from, I was literally providing free legal services to low-income people living in the Bronx with AIDS. Most of my work was in the Bronx. And I thought, producing is going to be a walk in the park after doing this. Where, God, was I naive. I think it trained me well to have tenacity and vision and be a voice for other people. But I did not expect to get so gray doing the work, Yeah.
I think it's curious for people out there to understand, how much taste is involved in producing, not only all the headaches of dealing with the budgets and the unions and all the variables that come in. How do you pick a project? How do you know that if you're working for 7 years on something like Just in Time, where does that start? Does it start with someone pitching you, or you hearing, or someone puts an idea in your head, or you're in a room over dinner with somebody and this idea emerges? Where does the germ germinate?
There's no one path, honestly. with just in time, Jonathan and I were doing Little Shop of Horrors together. And I had been determined to keep that show off Broadway, even if it became successful. I felt I wanted to honor Howard Ashman's wishes, were that he wrote it to stay in an intimate theater. And I fundamentally believe that's where it needed to live. And I spoke about that a lot. Jonathan and I just got each other. He really loved working with me. I loved working with him. We got in an elevator during rehearsals one day, and he just said, "Kirdahy, I have in my head this project. I did an evening of songs, of Bobby Darin's songs, an evening that was curated by Ted Chapin. And it really went well, and I'm obsessed with him. I can't get the rights. I've been trying, and I want to do this." And I think it was a 6th-floor elevator ride. And as we got out of the elevator, I said, "I think I understand what you're talking about. I'm going to make this happen." And against all odds, that happened. So in that instance, I love Bobby Darin's music. I thought he had led an interesting life. But the true reason was I believed in Jonathan as an artist, and I said I don't want to do a conventional bio musical. If my name is going to be on something, we have to do something that really hasn't been seen before, and we committed that to one another. And Alex Timbers felt the same way. And we talked a lot about that. I just didn't want to have my name on something that wasn't artful, to be honest with you.
I get it.
With a play like The Inheritance, that got sent to me by an agent who, I had done AIDS work. My whole life has been committed.
Right. No, now I see the connection.
And so that was a very different path. That had some challenging history, and it was very long, and it didn't scream commercial theater. But when I read the first of 6 acts, it was like a bullseye to my heart. I knew those characters, and I knew how it should live on a stage. So what I really say is, when my head and my heart meet, that is when I feel I have to do something. When I only pay attention to my heart or only to my head, it doesn't work as well. But taste is a huge part of it. And at this point in my career, many artists come to me because of my taste. And I think I'm known as an artist-driven producer. Certainly Bill Condon said that at the screening of Spider-Woman last night. And I think most people who've worked with me would agree with that.
Well, it would, what resonates for me as you're talking is I'm thinking, this all evolved with your husband at your side. Terrence must have, and I know his own, beside his writing talent, his culture vulture impulses,
Yes,
must have been a great symbiotic impact for your own understanding of what works on a stage, how words and other elements of a production coalesce. All those things must have been very much part of your relationship with Terrence.
Yeah, you'll pardon the phrase, but it was like having a master class with a with a great artist. I mean, Terrence has passed away 5.5 years ago, and I didn't understand until he was gone just how much I was learning from him on a daily basis. But the greatest lesson of all, I'd say there are 2 things. He went to theater wherever we were. So we saw a community theater production of Sound of Music in California once, and we wept. I mean,
I'm getting chills.
We were driving to Key West once. We saw a sign for his play Mothers and Sons in a North Carolina theater. And we went anonymously, and wherever we were, we went to the theater. But when and he would go, if he took an interest in a young artist in particular in this city, in New York, we'd schlep out to Brooklyn or Queens or the Bronx into tiny spaces, and his breathing was so compromised, but nothing would stop him. He would ascend stairs. He would sit in like garages. He just loved it. And I mean, after he passed, I got literally hundreds, probably thousands of letters from people saying, "I'll never forget the time he climbed the stairs and in this loft and saw my production of X." But the thing that I loved most about him is when the lights went out, he couldn't wait. And he was hilarious when something wasn't good, I mean, but he went in with an open heart and an open mind and never, ever lost his joy for theater making.
Oh, it's so beautiful to hear you say these words. I love them. And he was not jaded at all, at least in terms of communicating with what was on stage. That conversation stayed fresh for him. I went to a play with him, and I remember that sort of like a boyish pleasure, but with obvious chops and understood what was working and what wasn't. But could still bring his whole self into the room and not feel like he had to be the guy with his arms folded, looking askance at what he was seeing.
100%. And what I loved in particular was with young artists, even when something wasn't working, he saw the promise in their work. And honestly, the streets of New York are filled with stories about how he wrote an encouraging letter, including Ahrens and Flaherty. When he saw Once on This Island, he wrote to them. And
that was before Ragtime.
Right. And that birthed a great relationship. But
amazing.
Now we've created this Terrence McNally Foundation. With his royalties, we are supporting early career playwrights, and we have several projects. The most successful one so far is an incubator at Rattlestick. 2 of the Terrence McNally Foundation plays will get productions at Atlantic Theater Company, and there's just more and more happening, and that feels great.
Oh, that's an extension of Terrence in the world. That's a wonderful project.
I remember seeing you at Zoe Caldwell's, the dimming of the lights for Zoe, and we were on the second floor of Sardi's, and Terrence was very ill. I don't know if you remember, he was using a walker at the time, and that was it was a very painful evening for him and for us. I mean, to be honest with you, we both knew that Terrence probably didn't have a lot of time left either. And he was there against doctor's orders, but he needed to be there celebrating legacy. And I feel so grateful that I got that unjaded love of theater from him, even when he could be hilarious about bad theater.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Well, it's only a play.
It's only a play, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that suffuses the philosophy. And I can feel it, Tom, when I see your name on a production. I get the linkage. It feels like a real stamp of approval from the ancestors, in a sense. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a little bit about producing on Broadway right now, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about Kiss of a Spider-Woman. But
sure.
You have these wonderful success stories that happen, and certainly with Just in Time, it's really a marriage of artist and material that really has paid off. In fact, paying off is probably an important issue here. The average ticket price is about $230. I think it's the highest on Broadway at the moment, which really is a testament to demand for the show. But when people talk to you, Tom, about the costs of Broadway and the ticket prices and the feeling that it's sailing in one direction and people's wallets are going in the other direction, what do you say about the situation we're in terms of just the cost of doing business and the difficulty of making these things profitable?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have answers, but as an attorney, I was trained to issue spot, right? And then you litigate around what an issue is. And I believe that running costs are genuinely out of control. And I do not place that in any one area of our ecosystem. I think collectively we have to take a look at the reality that most shows, most new musicals, the running costs are more than $1 million a week, 1.1, 1.2. And that, to me, is unsustainable. So on a personal level, I am looking at shows that won't cost that to run. I just, especially new works. I don't know how it happens. I mean, audiences are still coming.
Right.
So it's extraordinary. And
Right.
new investors seem to still be coming forward.
Interesting.
But at some point, I do think that's going to break. I don't know how my brother and his wife, retired public school teachers who live on Long Island, can see more than one show a year if it's, the cost of 2 tickets is $460. They haven't parked. They haven't gone out to dinner. It's, I don't know where this goes, but I do think we all have to put a mirror up on our own involvement and find economic models that allow everyone to win. And so, I remember when we did The Visit years ago, Chita Rivera, her last starring role. And I understood that it was a very dark Kander and Ebb musical that ended in a murder. So I knew it was,
Yes, I remember.
I knew it was challenging economically, or thematically. And it was hard to raise that money. Most people invested for legacy. They understood that,
Sure.
and we all believed that it belonged on Broadway. But I did have to say to the producers, the theater owners, the actors, everyone, that this economic model has to be one of shared sacrifice. If we succeed, fantastic. Like,
Right.
I don't need to make any money. But the only way we can get this up is if everybody gives up something. And that was a unique circumstance because it was for Cheetah as much as
Sure. Of course.
for anything else. And when I think back on that, I'd like to look at that model a little more closely, because this conversation of is the musical in trouble is so present for all of us in the industry right now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, invoking sort of a moral authority is an interesting part of this, is saying, I like when you said the understanding going in is, this may not make a killing. It may not even make its money back, but there's other considerations here, which is really almost a nonprofit argument.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And it leads me to the question. So today now, Tom, are you making decisions to actually pull the trigger on or push the button, say yes, to get to that? Is it a harder consideration for you than it was 10 years ago, or even when you did Hadestown? The actual saying yes takes more exertion, more agita, more effort?
For me, it does, yes. Hadestown is a great example because I would do it again tomorrow. And Hadestown had manageable running costs. It was a young artist that who was unfamiliar to our industry, and we all got behind her because we believed so passionately in the material. And those, if you put them in 2025 economic terms, it would still be a musical that I think you could make run. I mean, I am really committed to any new musicals that I do will be well under $1 million in their running costs. I can't take that risk. The outlier for my current ethos is Ragtime, which is a massive musical, but we're doing that in conjunction with
Lincoln
Lincoln
Center.
Center.
Right.
So on many levels, it's a nonprofit, for-profit hybrid,
Yes, I get it.
and that makes that achievable. And for me, given the state of the world and that show, and frankly, my relationship with that show, I think this is the perfect time to be doing Ragtime. I think Lear has done an incredible job. I think this cast is off the charts. And I think as we question the longevity of our democracy, I think that we need to be really examining who we are as a country and doing it in very human terms. So economically, I was determined to be a part of Ragtime, and it's a massive show.
Uh-huh.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And I'm a Tony nominator, so I am constrained from saying what I think. I haven't seen the Lincoln Center Theater production. I saw it at Encores. So I have an inkling of what you're talking about. And of course, I think I've seen every incarnation of Ragtime in the New York, Washington sphere. And, it's no secret to say, I mean, I have reviewed it many times, and the score is, a gorgeous thing. And there are moments of Ragtime that are, really transcendent, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it again. I've heard little bits about some of the theatricalizations that are new that intrigue me. And doing these epic scale musicals now are it's so crucial that we show audiences the scale of what musicals can achieve, not just 5 people on a stage. And I love things with 5 people on a stage, but the opposite is so important.
It is so refreshing to hear a 26-piece orchestra. And, Ragtime wouldn't be made today, or I don't think it would be. And I think you're right. I think if we lose that ambition, I think that is dangerous for our future. So, another piece of the ecosystem is nonprofits who are also struggling, and whose funding is being taken away for reasons that the world of philanthropy is complex. I mean, the grant-based removal of any DEI, anything that's deemed DEI, is I think ludicrous and anti-art.
Oh, I agree. And I agree completely.
It's concerning.
Completely. And it's interesting to hear you talk, with your social activism background, where that intersects with the art and the mission of theater as something that has societal benefit, that is a plus for people, edifying and moving, and all the things that we take from it, and understanding that you bring that into this sphere is very reassuring as a theater goer to hear you talk about that.
Thank you. It's incredibly important to me. And I'm very involved with the Government Relations Committee of the League, because I think these tax credits are a huge part of how we continue to make art. So the stories I tell, I hope, can advance the human condition. But on the policy side, I remain very active, because if we're not a generative society in terms of creating new works, we will have failed. And that, I think, democracies tumble without art.
Yeah.
So.
No, so true. So can we talk a little bit about the movie, about Kiss of the Spider Woman? Because I wondered if that has a whole other set of challenges, bringing a musical to the big screen. I assume this is something you've wanted to do for a long time.
Yes.
I have to believe this was not something that sort of came into one's mind in the recent past. This must have been something you were looking to do for a long time, no?
Yes, absolutely. In 2017, Jennifer Lopez was doing a residency in Vegas, and I got in front of her and said, I believe you should do Spider-Woman someday. And Cheetah knew this, and Terrence and John Kander knew this, and everyone thought it was a great idea. And she said, "Look, I would love to. I love musicals. My life is insane right now, but keep me in mind." And I was really thinking for the stage, but
Right.
2018, Bill Condon contacted John Kander and Terrence and said, "I'd love to meet with you and talk about Spider-Woman as a movie." I was in that meeting happened in the apartment I'm sitting in right now. Terrence and John and Bill sat in the living room. I was in another room eavesdropping. And Bill said, I've always wanted to make a musical of Spider-Woman. Would you give me your blessing? And both said, absolutely. We think you should tell the story the way you do. You're a master of movie musicals. And Bill said to Terrence and John, "Yeah, I would want you involved." And Terrence, you can write it. And Terrence said, "I'm not a screenwriter,
Mm.
and I love your work. I want you to write this musical the way you want to."
Wow.
There were issues with rights. 2 years pass. COVID happens. Terrence dies. I'm devastated. And he died in March. And in early June, I looked this up recently. I sent Bill an email and said, I can think of no greater way of celebrating Terrence's legacy than getting this film made.
Mm.
And he wrote back, and he could have just disappeared, or
Right.
he wrote back instantly and said, "I couldn't agree more. But let's do this on our terms. I don't want to take any money. I want us to do this independently and make the movie that we want to make." And that began a 5-year journey. In the fall of, oh God, is it 22 or 23? Fall of 23, September of 23, he emailed me the screenplay. I was on a plane. I read it. I sobbed. I absolutely sobbed. The flight attendant was like, "Sir, are you okay?" And I
No, I'm not okay.
No, I just, "I'm fine. I'm fine." And I had read this study that our emotions are heightened when we're on airplanes.
Huh.
So I thought, I don't want to tell anyone how much I loved it.
You want to read it again when you're
Yes.
on the ground?
So 48 hours later, in my office, very quietly, I read it, and I had a very similar, really powerful reaction. And I wrote to Bill, and other people became involved, but I got the screenplay to Jennifer's agent, and I rarely say, "Drop everything and read this," because my credibility is very important to me. And one of the most powerful agents on the planet, Kevin Huvane, read it very quickly, got it to Jennifer, who read it very quickly, and it started moving.
Wow.
Very quickly. Artist Equity, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's company, and Mohari Media came along with financing, and then Roadside Attractions and LD Entertainment came on to distribute. But it's been years in the making, and it's my first, and I hope I can do more.
And you have these two actors, obviously these parts have been made famous by one Oscar-winning performance in the non-musical version, but you cast two actors who really are not well known. Tona Tiu is an extraordinary find.
Yes.
And I wondered, how did you decide that? How did that, alongside, I guess, J-Lo, you had some leeway in terms of what was possible in terms of casting?
We did, and I have to say that Artist Equity and Mohari were great. We had Jennifer Lopez and Diego Luna.
And Diego Luna, of course.
They were our first two choices, Jennifer and Diego. And when they both said yes, that made our lives easier.
I see.
That gave us license to go with an unknown. And to the credit of the financiers, they said, "Yeah, we're good. You should do that. Cast the best person for this role." And we worked with the Telsey office, Bernie Telsey's office, and there were a lot of famous people who were submitted. We were committed to casting someone who was queer and someone who was Latino, even though lots of other people wanted to be in it, that we just wanted to do it with integrity. And it was a long process, but Tonatiuh's self-made tape kept coming to the top.
Wow.
And Bill and I, we were at a gala premiere screening last night, and Bill reminded me, we met with John Kander, who had a cold, at his home on the Upper West Side. And I think we brought 5 tapes of the finalists. And we really knew who we wanted. Some other people, there were a few other really viable candidates, and some that we just thought weren't very good, just didn't hear the rhythm of the language and didn't understand Melina's wit. But during that meeting in, legendary John Kander's bedroom, he's 97 years old, as sharp as can be, and just so funny, but so opinionated. Tonatiuh's performance was the one that we all agreed was the right one.
Amazing.
And then we put him through his paces. We made him do screen tests and
of course,
read with Diego and dance with Jennifer. And we really put them through their paces. And there was consensus that
this wonderful doubling that happens in the movie of Diego and Tonatiuh playing both the inmates, and then in the movies with J-Lo, with Aurora. The transformation of Tonatiuh is stunning.
It's stunning.
From, it was, it just, wow. It just walloped me when you suddenly see them as the Aurora's assistant, and this kind of like drop dead screen idol look that he has. So anyway, I'm not to take away anybody else's performance, but that was an interesting moment, and also the interesting changes that happened to the script in becoming a movie musical. Some of the elements that were very prominent in the musical, such as the numbers that happen in the prison, are now not part of have been transformed.
Yeah. No, again, John and Terrence said to Bill, we understand you just can't, in the same way Terrence adapted novels and films for the stage.
Oh, right.
The sort of reverse rules apply.
Interesting.
Yeah. And people just don't burst into song. When you're in a theater, a live performance, there's a social compact that allows that to do it. The films operate with a different set of rules. And so Bill really dug in, again, with permission from Terrence and John. And Terrence's former assistant, a young man named Santino D'Angelo, who now runs the Terrence McNally Foundation, did a ton of research found all of Terrence's earlier drafts, found a draft from Manuel Puig, who was originally going to try to write the musical. And then there were found old songs that never made it to the stage. And so we're not getting an exact replica.
Right.
But I spoke to Fred Ebb's nephew last night, and Cheetah's assistant, Rosie, and I was with Graziella Danielle last night, and we all agreed that they would really there's that final card that says, for Fred, Terrence, and Cheetah. The movie is dedicated to them. And we all feel really good that they would love it. I mean, I'll tell you a very funny story, funny in the, show busy way. We had a very private funeral ceremony for Cheetah. I did a reading at it. And there's a role that was written for Cheetah in the movie, and Cheetah knew about it, and she was going to do it. And of course, she passed away, Clemencia, the role that Grazi played. So I'm at the funeral, this very private affair. It hasn't begun yet. I'm sitting next to John Kander.
Is that the woman around the table? In the dinner scene? Yeah.
Yeah. So not in the dinner scene, the woman from the village. In the in the movie within the movie.
Oh, right. I got it. Yeah.
So,
yes, of course.
So we're sitting in a pew in a church at Cheetah's funeral, as Cheetah's funeral is about to begin. This role had been written for her. Graciela Danielle, who was Cheetah's best friend, they did Chicago together, and Jules Fisher, her husband, the great lighting designer, are sitting in the pew behind us. Bill Condon and I had said we think Gracie should play the part. I and John Kander is saying, Graciela, we should ask Graciela. And so I'm literally texting Bill Condon, can we ask her? Like, we're all here together. So that role was cast at Cheetah's funeral.
Perfect.
And I thought, I'm like a kid from the suburbs, and I'm at Cheetah Rivera's music, like funeral.
It's amazing.
It was amazing.
And it's like spiritually, this has got so much connection.
Peter, 100%. It just felt and we were howling. I mean, we were just,
that's
which
great.
Peter would have loved.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect story.
Yeah.
So bringing this all the way around, this idea, of this musical set in this authoritarian time, right?
Yes.
At the same time that a musical about immigration is coming back, these are all infused with McNally, all speaking to the times we live in. It must feel very satisfying, very complete for you. There is completion here of all kinds of threads in your own arc in what's happened to you over time. And those coming together must be a very affecting moment for you.
It is. I talk to Terrence every day still. Last night, as I was leaving, when on our first date, he had a necklace that had a spider on it that someone had given him for Spider-Woman. And so I put that on, I kissed his Tony Award, and I walked out the door. But I will say that he would be so upset about what's happening in our country right now. And he was such a truth teller. Terrence was out before Stonewall, before his peers, frankly. He didn't know how to be anybody but who he was, for better and worse, and that Ragtime, someone said to me, did you do any rewrites for Ragtime? Because the language really is landing very differently. I've never heard Ragtime like this. I mean, and that includes the city center production. And I said, not one word has been changed.
Wow.
So that his works are being done in such meaningful ways.
They stand the test of time.
They really do. It means the world to me. I think it's upsetting that
right.
they feel so necessary right now.
Yeah.
Not just that they're beautiful, but they feel urgent and necessary. But, so be it. Artists are leaders, right? I mean,
I go back and I look at my reviews of Ragtime, and at each stage of having seen it, something about the time speaks in the musical to us. Yeah. And sometimes it's different. But that's when you know that something's enduring in an important way. And it doesn't have to be that one thing when something is speaking to so many issues over time.
Yeah.
It's a testament.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. It is so much fun to talk to you.
It's nice spending time with you. Thank you. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's great to sort of step out of the hubbub and really just sort of get a strong dose of Kirdahy. I appreciate it. So thanks for doing this.
I look forward to more. Thanks for this conversation. All right.
A pleasure. And that's it for this solo edition of Marks and Vincentelli. Elizabeth, wherever you are, I hope you're listening. Come back soon. Meantime, subscribe to us at marksvincentelli.substack.com and follow us on Instagram. The account is Marks and Vincentelli. If you do these things, we can continue to bring you this caliber of theater talk. We'll be back soon.